Hey Aquarius, how's it going? I got some oracle messages for you here. I'm getting a sense of some victory close at hand, or some good feeling about something that you're doing or working toward, but also some things mixed in there that are not so good. I get this idea that there are two forces mixed up in your emotional center, and it's very difficult to differentiate between the two. There's a treacherous sort of energy and a knightly, noble, stalwart sort of energy mixed up in your emotional center very thoroughly. And it's important at this time to find out how to separate, distill, identify, and purify these two energies, these two forces within you, this sort of traitor and this knight. And right now they feel like one thing. You probably have these mixed feelings about things that you're doing, mixed feelings about people around you, or something like that. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, and they feel more or less coherent. They feel like they're coming from a unified place, but in fact they might not be. These could be two distinct things fighting for dominance within you. And there's that old American idea of each of us having two wolves inside of us fighting each other for dominance of our personality. A good one and a bad one, a brave one and a frightened one. And the one that wins is the one that we feed. But first you have to identify those two wolves and not treat them as one wolf, but to separate them and notice them, distill them and purify them. Working with water, whether it's an analogy or literally working with water in some sort of occult fashion, might be useful. And ritual bathing, purification, baptism, these sorts of things can help if you ritualize the process of identifying and separating these two forces and purifying them and feeding the one that you want to feed and letting the other one wither and die. You have a knight, like K-N-I-G-H-T, and a traitor within your emotional center at this time. And you can feed one and the other one will eventually atrophy and disappear. So be careful which one you choose. I also got an itching hexagram for you. We got abundance with the third changing line. So it changes to taking action. Maybe the numbers 55 and 51 are significant for you at this time. So here we do have like a really good opportunity here. Like I said earlier, there's a victory close at hand, or there's something that you've succeeded in, or something that you feel enthusiastic and good about, something that is going to help you walk down the road, or you've taken a few steps down the road and you're feeling good about this direction, this progress, this whatever that's come into your life that you've chosen to do. These actions are starting to bear fruit. But there's a ways to go yet before you can fully enjoy the fruits of this labor. You don't want to rush the last bit. You want to stay steady. You might see the finish line, but there's no need to sprint. You might pull a muscle or something, metaphorically, God forbid it actually happens. And just keeping a steady pace. You've been taking the steps anyway. Don't rush it. You're gonna get to the finish line. There's no reason to push it or to test your luck at this time. Just keep doing what works at the pace that is not pushing too much boundaries, not too much at the bleeding edge, not you don't want to overreach your grasp. You want to make sure you've got the right hand holds and the right foot holds as you're climbing up the mountain. You can see the summit, but you can't rush. You'll grab the wrong rock, or you'll have the wrong foothold, and you'll take a few steps back, or it'll slow you down, or something like that. And here with this third changing line, we have sort of this image of the sun at noon. But it's a very bizarre and surreal type of sun at noon, because it's still somewhat dim and dark. Even though the sun at noon has a great deal of strength, there are still stars visible in the sky. It's almost like nighttime. The sun has diminished its brightness, or something has darkened the sun to allow room for starlight to come through. And there are some interesting moments in history recorded where this has actually happened. They say that around the year 28 to 35 AD, somewhere in there, Christian historians have equated it with the crucifixion of Christ, but that the sun actually darkened for a few days when Christ was crucified. And there are a number of historical accounts of this having happened, and some people could see the stars even though the sun was out. I think there were maybe 2 or 3 other occasions like this during the Bronze Age collapse. I think it was around 1600 BC, if I remember correctly. The stars could be seen during the daytime even though the sun was out. So there is a historical precedent for such a strange thing. But what it really means is allowing more subtle mysteries to come in to your life, allowing room for other types of opportunities, for little flowers to blossom, for little... it's kind of hard to explain. Like, you don't want to burn the candle at both ends. You don't want to burn too brightly. This goes back to the idea of not rushing to the finish line. You can afford to diminish yourself a little bit, because if you burn too brightly, your light can be blinding. You can even blind yourself, and you might miss certain opportunities, certain interesting things that could help you. You might scorch these young little seedlings that are around you, like tiny little plants that could grow into something great, but if you're burning too brightly, the heat from your inner sun will be too much. So you don't want to push yourself to damage some potentially interesting small opportunities around you, or ideas or insights or little rewards, little accomplishments. It could be anything, but there's this idea of like, keep doing what you're doing, but don't be like explosive and crazy about it. Just be powerful like the sun at noon. Be that powerful person that you are, but just don't overdo it, and don't over-focus on the goal. Focus on the goal, but not at the expense of the things around you. Because the things around you might show some beautiful little mysteries and things that could be very useful, playful, interesting, inspiring. So it's about taking steady steps toward the goal, keep working at what you're doing, but also keep your awareness around you, and be open to little bits of interesting starlight that come through. So I'm going to pull some cards for you and clarify what this traitorous energy is and what this knightly energy is, and maybe help you to be able to identify them and what to do with them. So first we'll take a look at this traitor energy, find out the bad wolf inside you, what it wants, what it's doing, what its nature is. What have we got for Aquarius? This guy wanted to come out. So we have the Four of Cups, or blended pleasure as it's called. Yeah, so this is not seeing something that's right in front of you, or refusing an opportunity out of a sense of like maybe tiredness or depression or just not feeling it-ness. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, if you want to refuse certain opportunities, that's entirely your prerogative. You still have 3 full cups in front of you, right? This guy still has 3 full cups in front of him. But he's also not super satisfied with those 3 cups, and he's kind of looking down at them like, ugh, look at these. Like, I know they're all right. Like, they're not terrible. These are good things to have, but man, I'd rather have something else. And that something else is being offered to him, but it's not within his sight line. So it could just be a simple lack of awareness and the lack of enthusiasm that is having you miss some type of opportunity that could be very helpful to you, or a little reward on the path before you get the big reward at the finish line, something that will help inspire you to keep going. You might be missing it because you could be in a bad mood, You could be maybe ill, and you just need to power through this moment and heal and get physically better before you see it. And sometimes when we're ill, like, that can really dampen our spirits. And trying not to get our spirits dampened while ill is an interesting exercise. It can be very helpful to try and choose to be happy even when we're sick, as like a mental experiment, like a mental health experiment. So just, yeah, I think when we discover what this nightly energy is, we'll get a better answer on this. So there's just a lack of paying attention or a lack of enthusiasm that is within you. And the reason it could be mingled with the nightly energy is because sometimes this lack of enthusiasm feels reasonable. It seems appropriate, like, oh, this thing's not working out, I should give up on it. When it might be too early to make that determination. You might not have worked on it long enough, or you might be like not seeing results. It could be one of those things that you work really hard at for a long time without seeing any results, because the result just needs more time to develop and come in. There are certain things like that in life that seem pretty level, like if we look at it on a graph of success, like it's level and level and level and level, and then suddenly there's success. But all that time of being level and level and level and level, we don't get any indication that what we're doing is working, and sometimes we give up too early. But depending on what it is you're doing and how long you've been doing it, we can sometimes quitting is a good idea, so we don't waste time, right? But in this case, I'm not getting any indication that quitting is a good idea. I'm getting the indication that you feel like quitting is a good idea when it might not be. You might be closer to your goal than you realize, or you might have more opportunities than you realize. So let's see what this knight is. The Hierophant. So here we have the Hierophant. So this is clarifying that internal knight you have, that the good wolf that wants to be fed along with the traitorous wolf. The good wolf that's looking for your attention in competition with the traitorous one. Now, this is a card of like deep spiritual knowledge, psychological knowledge, and the capacity to teach it or to understand it and to put it to good use. So having a sense of, what's the word for it? Like, perseverance here. To become a Hierophant, first we become inspired spiritually or psychologically by the religious life or the spiritual life, right? This is specifically for the Hierophant. This can be an analogy, of course. I'm not suggesting everybody becomes bishops and popes. This is just the analogy. But we were first inspired by the religious path. We join a church. We take it seriously. We graduate from layman to priest. We begin helping people through counsel and sermon and poverty relief, and we do the things that a priest does. If we are truly called to do it and develop it further, we can work our way up to being appointed bishop, right? And from bishop, we can move into other positions like cardinal or the head honcho himself, Il Papa, right? This is like a process that begins with a vocation, a calling. You don't become the Pope or a Hierophant because it's like, oh, it's just a job I'll get. Oh, because there's social status at the end. Now, of course, we know people become the Pope in our world because of the social status and stuff like that. I'm not going to literally take the history of the Catholic Church into account here. I'm just speaking ideally and imaginally that a calling within us will, if we follow it, leads us to great accomplishment. And it's a deep calling. It's not like, oh, I'm doing this because I can, or I'm doing this because got to make money somehow, got to have social status somehow. Like how lots of people just get jobs. They just go to college and get jobs. It's not because it's a calling. It's not a vocation. It's because it's what society demands of us. This is something that's like something that you really want to do, that you've been getting good at, and it wants to be fed. It wants to be noticed and treated more seriously. It's this thing within you, this vocation, this calling, isn't going to be satisfied if you ignore it, if you choose another path. It won't become this Hierophant. You have to develop when you have the time. You know, a lot of us don't have the time to develop these things, or it's very difficult to find the time. But if you want something bad enough, you'll find the time. If you have a true vocation and a true calling, you will do it. Otherwise, you will not have peace within yourself. And this is like, if you want peace, follow your vocation. That's kind of what this card says. And the traitor has you ignoring this vocation within you. The traitor is like, no, you have these 3 cups in front of you. They're full. It's enough. So ignore the vocation. You don't need it. What you have right now pays the bills. Don't rock the boat. You have enough. And knowing when you have enough can be a great thing. But this is where it gets mixed. Because you have this sense of, I have enough in terms of money or social status. Like, I can live a life and I'm not going to starve or be homeless, so I have enough. And that's a good mentality. That mentality can bleed into psychological and spiritual fulfillment as well, where you also say, well, I also have enough emotional and psychological fulfillment, when that might not be the case. And we are then challenged, like, with a couple of options. Do I ignore my need for psychological and emotional fulfillment, try to change my psychology and my emotional center so that I am okay without this fulfillment? That's an option. That is one way the Hierophant works, is teaching us how to be satisfied with what we have and gaining fulfillment through contentment. And that's a fine path, and that's a choice you have. The other option is, do I follow the vocation? And do I notice that my financial fulfillment and psychological fulfillment are actually 2 different things? They're not the same thing. This traitorous energy wants me to equate the 2. If I have enough money, it means I have enough mental health. Like a lot of people today believe that money will purchase them mental health, that once I have enough money, then I'll feel fine. And 9 times out of 10, that doesn't work, because they're ignoring their vocation, their calling. They might not have even recognized their calling. So you're being called to recognize your calling, and you have that choice. Do I follow my calling to have peace, or do I learn how to ignore my calling? Do I learn how to develop contentment and not follow the calling? And both options are plausible. You just have to decide which one you really want, which one is right for you, which choice is correct. I'm going to pull a token for you, Aquarius. Let's see, one last thing. What does Aquarius need to know? Ooh, 3 came out. Okay, interesting. So we have the alchemical symbols for Earth and Ether, and actually for the planet Earth, the astrological symbol for the planet Earth, the elemental symbol for the element Earth, and the element of Ether, also known as the Akasha, or the 5th element. So here, we have this idea of bringing something, an impulse from the spiritual world, bringing it into the etheric world where it takes on its characteristics, and then manifesting it into the physical world. So spiritual impulse passes through the ether in sort of downward movement, and while it goes through the ether, it takes on all of its material attributes of, electromagnetism and heat and atomism and material qualities, and then it manifests as like a thing in this world that we can interact with as humans. So there is this idea of perhaps the best option is the one that you can really interact with in that etheric layer of reality, that between the physical and spiritual, the one that feels right, the one that you can do the most with in this world. You can discover which of these impulses, maybe I should be okay with what I have and develop contentment, that spiritual impulse of being content coming into this world and making the most of what you have already, and manifesting, just like tending your garden, making it blossom, just making the most of what you already have. Or the other impulse of following your vocation and doing your best to turn it into a physical reality. And again, I'm getting this idea that like you have the choice and the power to make either of those successful. There doesn't seem to be a wrong choice here. The most important thing is peace. You know, the earth and the element of earth represent the desire to have peace. So it's not so much what you're doing, it's that you cultivate peace while doing it. And that peace is sort of the goal here, and recognizing that. So explore what sort of spiritual impulses are coming in right now. Another analogy with that dimmed sun, the darkened sun at noon, and being able to see the stars at night. That's like being able to see the spiritual impulses coming down to the earth, being able to recognize them, even though you are so bright, and normally these things would be hidden from your awareness because of so much activity and so much focus everywhere, that these spiritual impulses, so much attention being put on everything, so much consciousness being put on everything in the earthly realm, that, you know, the stars you can't see the stars at night when all that consciousness is here with the sun. So quieting down what you're paying attention to, quieting down that consciousness, turning down the light a little bit, and allowing these spiritual impulses to come in, and find which ones you wish to cultivate. Find which ones you can really like pick up on, like a radio antenna. Which ones are really easily coming through the ether and inspiring you. Which spiritual impulses are the ones that really vibe with you, that are really tuned in to your radio station, and that you feel like you can really do something with. And we can really only do that in moments of quietness and self-reflection and self-remembrance. You know, dimming our consciousness into a more meditative state that's more open to hearing these or receiving these spiritual impulses, because they're so tenuous and quiet, these impulses. They generally don't override our attention. They don't override our conscious minds. They don't override our focus. We have to choose to diminish these things, our outward focus and attention, and then we can start to hear these really quiet, fragile, tenuous spiritual impulses. And there are a few here that you can pick up on and utilize, and you might be failing to see them. So take some time to yourself whenever you get a few moments to just breathe deep and turn off your thoughts and relax into what the spiritual realm is trying to tell you, what your higher self is trying to tell you, what your future self is trying to tell you. It's time to listen and choose. So Aquarius, I think that's where I'm going to leave it for you today. I always appreciate you stopping by. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you next time.